The penultimate matter on our agenda today is item number 9, AB 753, and then we'll conclude with Ms. Atkins, item 11, AB 887. Mr. Monning, good morning. Well, actually, good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. I want to thank all of you for your patience and this opportunity to present this important piece of legislation today. I also want to thank the witnesses for their patience. I'd like to start by accepting the committee's suggested amendments outlined in the analysis. AB 753, known as the Raechel and Jacqueline Houck Auto Rental Safety Act, will prohibit rental car companies from renting vehicles which are subject to a federal safety recall once the companies have been notified by the manufacturer that the vehicle is the subject of the recall. Once the vehicles have been repaired, the car can be rented out once again by the agency. Existing federal and state law has a loophole that allows rental car companies to rent out vehicles under safety recall, even though new car dealers are prohibited from selling new cars that are under the same recall. Under federal law, motor vehicles are subject to mandatory safety recalls for two reasons. They have a defect that poses an unreasonable risk to the public, and they fail to comply with mandatory federal safety standards. This bill is important to ensure that the Houck tragedy, whereby Carol Houck's daughters, Raechel and Jacqueline Houck, were killed while driving a recalled PT Cruiser rented from Enterprise, never happens again. Approximately 1 month before the Houck sisters were killed, Enterprise received a notice from Chrysler that the PT Cruiser had a defective steering component and was prone to catch fire. Despite the warning, Enterprise rented the car to 3 other customers before renting the PT Cruiser to the Houck sisters. I want to acknowledge that some rental car companies have indeed changed their policies as a result of this tragedy, but legislation is still necessary to ensure that all consumers are protected when they rent a car in the state of California. We need to ensure that rental car companies don't become complacent with their policies and rent out recalled cars, as well as to ensure that smaller rental car companies who do not have such policies in place do not rent out recalled cars to retain their smaller customer base. I know the opposition believes that all safety recalls should not be treated the same. The facts are, federal regulations treat all safety recalls the same. If there wasn't a safety risk, then they would not be the subject of a safety recall. The manufacturer could issue a technical bulletin if it was not a safety recall. I do not believe it is our place as a state to second-guess a federal safety agency whose primary mission is to protect driver and rider safety. Lastly, on March 31st, a piece was published in the New York Times that NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, was expanding its investigation into whether millions of rental cars are being repaired quickly. NHTSA is requiring specific information from rental car companies regarding this issue. By NHTSA taking this step, it shows us that they are also concerned about this issue and want to know more about the various companies' policies. Consumers need to know that when they rent a car, that the car is safe. AB 753 will help protect consumers. I have several witnesses here to testify in support. First, Mr. Chair, I'd like to invite Ms. Carol Houck, the mother of Raechel and Jacqueline, for her testimony.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the committee. It's on.
Thank you very much, committee. I want to first give my profound appreciation to Assemblymember Monning for naming this bill in memory of my daughters who didn't have to die. This bill is important because it closes a loophole. And this loophole has allowed the rental car industry to avoid the federal mandates under recall laws that are mandated for the new car dealers and the manufacturing industry. They are in the business of making profit over the consumer, over the renting of these cars. Yet they oppose this bill because of the economic consequences they're concerned about. I'm not concerned about the state of their economic well-being, nor should any other consumer who gives their good money to get a safe vehicle. The rental car industry is the single largest source of automobiles on America's highways. My daughter's lives ended when they lost control of the car that they had rented from Enterprise for exactly the reason it had been recalled, a fire under the hood. My daughter, Raechel, 24 years old, and my second daughter, Jacqueline, age 20, plowed head-on into an 18-wheeler. This could very well have been an incident where they had plowed head-on into a van carrying a family of 5. Why does the industry oppose this? Committee, this is not rocket science. This should not be a partisan issue. This concerns consumers and the safety of consumers. This does not concern the well-being of these corporate giants who enjoy a lot of profits over a very healthy industry.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in support.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Rosemary, Shahan, President of Consumers for Auto Reliability and Safety, and we're the sponsors of the bill. And we greatly appreciate Assemblymember Monning's offering it and Carol Houck's willingness to speak up. And we would note that she was exceptional in that she refused to sign a confidentiality agreement. And typically in cases like this, that's what happens. There's confidentiality. And I asked the sergeant to distribute to the members a statement issued yesterday by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I asked him to help clarify, because I know that the industry is asking for a 2-tiered safety recall system, which would be unprecedented regarding any consumer product, let alone this one, which is the most lethal consumer product in the country and in our state. And basically, what NHTSA said was that they believe that rental car companies have a responsibility to provide safe vehicles to their customers, and that all safety recalls resulting from defects present an unreasonable risk to safety, and that the agency believes it's inappropriate to suggest that some defects are not risky enough to require repair. For the safety of the motoring public, all recalled vehicles should be fixed promptly. And that's what the bill would do. It simply require rental car companies, once they receive notice that there is a safety recall, to act promptly. And I would note that there's already an existing provision in the federal law that says if a manufacturer believes that the defect is inconsequential and does not impact safety, they are permitted to petition the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration not to require a recall. And they very rarely do this. Almost all the compliance with the federal statute is voluntary compliance with the mandate for the recall, for the simple reason that usually it's quite obvious that the vehicle is unsafe. Usually the safety recalls involve things like seatbelts that don't work, airbags that don't work,
Thank you for your
fires,
testimony.
etc.
Thank you. Others in support.
Hello, my name is Elisa Odebashian. I'm the director of the West Coast Office of Consumers Union, the nonprofit publisher of Consumer Reports magazine. We're in strong support of this bill. I'll just add
Actually, if you would, that just sort of name and
Okay.
affiliation. So thank you for your testimony. Others in support?
Christopher Dolan, immediate past president of the Consumer Attorneys of California, in support.
Thank you. Others in support of Mr. Monning's bill?
Offer your name and association.
Yes, my name is Ben Kelly. I'm on the board of directors of the Center for Auto Safety, which is a national consumer protectionist organization. I'm also a member of the adjunct faculty of Tufts Medical School. I'm here in the capacity of an expert on motor vehicle safety issues and defect recalls in particular, and I gather that's to answer questions. Is
No,
that?
yeah, just to indicate your support for
Yes,
now.
and I do support this
Thank
bill
you.
very strongly.
Are there other witnesses here in support of Mr. Monning's bill? Sir, please just indicate your name and your support, please.
My name is Carl Nienauber. I'm a concerned, outraged citizen that this is happening, and I urge you all to vote for this
Thank you.
bill.
Now, are there witnesses here in opposition to the bill? Good afternoon. First witness in opposition, please.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. Thank you, Bill. My name is Tom Laffey. I'm the General Counsel for Enterprise, and I'm here speaking on behalf of our parent company and our regional subsidiaries that rent cars, including the 3 that operate in California. I know this is a matter of tremendous importance, and I appreciate the passion and the energy on the other side because I know it's sincerely felt. It's a matter of a great deal of interest. I personally have been to Washington, D.C. on multiple occasions in the last 6 months to meet with the Federal Trade Commission, which is looking at this issue, to meet with the National Highway Transportation Safety folks, NHTSA, to talk about the issue. As was already mentioned, we're providing information to them. They're looking at the issue. We've recently provided them information that reflects that the rental car companies generally get about 90% of all recalled vehicles fixed in the first 30 days. I think when they're all their deliberations and their study are concluded, you're going to find that that is a record that far exceeds any other class of vehicle owners by a considerable measure. We oppose this bill. We oppose it because we believe it's not necessary, it's not workable, and it's discriminatory. Recalls are not all alike. The bill uses as the trigger for an obligation to not rent the vehicle, and per the amendment that I saw last night for the first time, an obligation to go try to get them back from people who have them on rent. The fact that a recall notice has been issued by the manufacturer. Recall notices are issued by manufacturers, generally speaking, over the last 20 years on a voluntary basis, and they come in all different sizes and shapes and for all different kinds of reasons. And I can give you just 2 quick examples that I think make the point, but I think the important thing to remember is that nowhere in the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Act that NHTSA administers is there any requirement or obligation that people who receive a recall notice do not continue to drive their car. In fact, I would submit that the expectation is that people will continue to drive their car. No provision in the Act is made for compensation to an owner who is no longer able to drive his car. And literally, except in rare instances that I'll speak to one in a moment, the expectation is that you'll make an appointment with a dealer and you'll take it in and you'll likely drive it to the dealer. The fact is that we get recall notices of all sorts. The manufacturers are obligated to include in the notice an evaluation of the risks to motor vehicle safety and a statement of the precautions, if any, that the owner should take.
Thank you for your testimony. If you'd like one concluding sentence and then the next witness, please.
Well, I would say one more thing, and then I'll pass it on. I in no way mean to minimize the tragedy that occurred to the Houck family. And I've got 3 daughters myself. We personally feel I can't imagine the pain and the loss. But we've had in our industry in excess of 3 billion rental days since 2004 with no similar incidents whatsoever. And frankly, none that occurred before.
Thank you.
And I don't believe this single incident warrants this
Thank you.
particular.
Other witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Robert Muse. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for Avis Budget Group. To follow up on what Tom was indicating, all recall notices really aren't the same. And I'll use one as a very good example. We received a recall notice with regard to a pedal entrapment issue where the manufacturer said the gas pedal would get stuck. The reality is if you removed the floor mat from the driver's side, that impediment is no longer there and the car is truly safe to be driven. But the recall notice actually says the repair to the car is a new gas pedal. So this bill seems to be putting in play intermittent and remedial measures that can be taken that won't be allowed to be taken and deprive people of an opportunity to rent a car. Avis Budget Group has had recall policies where we've grounded cars since at least 1983 when we get the notice. We take it very, very seriously. We have a team of people that review it. And in fact, we are consumers like everybody else, and we have to check with the manufacturer and say, what do you really mean by this? We've indicated to Mr. Monning on a number of occasions that the federal government is indeed looking at this, the Federal Trade Commission, NHTSA, Mr. Schumer, and the U.S. Senate. We've encouraged people to come with us and have an open dialogue on the federal basis, because this really is a federal issue. Our cars go interstate commerce. NHTSA is governed by federal rules and regs. It should really be done at the federal level. Finally, we find it really odd that public safety is really not the issue here. It's really a rental car issue. If the Houcks, unfortunately, were in a limousine, this would be a limousine bill. If they were in a taxi cab, this would be a taxi cab bill. You shouldn't single out one single industry that does a very good job, with one exception, in recalling its vehicles and getting them fixed, and not deal with the other issues that sit out there on the highways.
Thank you for your testimony. Other witnesses here in opposition to Mr. Monning's bill?
John Ross, on behalf of the Hertz Corporation, I would compliment your committee staff on what I thought was a pretty balanced and fair analysis of this issue. It's complicated, and we're willing to keep working if there's a desire to work towards a solution.
Thank you for your testimony. Others in opposition?
Teresa Cook, on behalf of the California Travel Association, also respectfully opposed.
Mira Curtin here on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, also in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, colleagues. Questions or comments for Mr. Monning on his bill? Mr. Wagner?
If I may, a couple. I am struck by a couple of the witnesses who have said that the federal government is looking into this, and that there has been one admittedly horrible and tragic incident that prompted this back in 2004, nothing before that, nothing after. So I guess I would ask, is it not appropriate that we leave this to the federal government? And I've got a couple of other questions that kind of will impact some of the federalism issues, but let me just throw that out for starters.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Wagner. First of all, while I fully support a federal solution to this, I don't think we can wait for the next Houck family to be stricken with a preventable tragedy with no guarantee when and how and if the federal government will get to this. California is one of the largest rental car markets in the country, I would submit in the world. With respect, I know a number of people have suggested, well, this is a tragic incident, but should we make policy based on one tragic incident? What we don't know is cases that were settled out of court with a confidentiality provision based on similar tragedies or other accidents. Also, I don't think we as a state, we as a committee who are empowered with the protection of renters should miss an opportunity to enforce what is already the standard. The federal government has recognized that when a vehicle is recalled, it should be removed from service. And just on that point, there was the suggestion that owners receive notices, owners of vehicles, they often wait weeks, months before they get it fixed. There's a profound difference here. When somebody goes into a rental car agency, their assumption in the contract they enter into is that they are renting a safe vehicle. The owner can choose whether or not they want to respond to a safety recall that they receive in the mail. Unfortunately, with a rental car customer, they're not receiving the notice. They're not giving the choice to determine whether or not they want to drive a vehicle that is the subject of recall. And I would submit that 99.9% of rental car customers, if given the choice at the counter, would you like to rent today a car subject to a safety recall or one that is not subject to a safety recall? That's what this bill serves to enforce, is the protection of a trusting consumer public.
Well, then why not have a bill that gives them the choice as opposed to one that mandates it?
Well, it's a fair question. It was raised in some of our earlier conversations. Anyone who has gone into a rental car agency and provided your initials as you're rushing from the airport to your appointment, nobody reads the fine print. If you had a waiver in there that required your initial, 99% of renters would initial that to get the keys, to get out to the parking lot. How many renters do you know who sit down with a 6, 8, 10, 12-page contract and read the fine print? That's not the way we provide consumer protection.
Let me ask, getting back to the sort of federal questions, I'm a little unclear on the bill. If I rent a car in Nevada that's subject to a recall, is the rental company allowed to rent it to me if they know I intend to drive it into California, or vice versa, if they know I intend to drive it from California into Nevada? How does this law apply?
Well, this law should protect, ultimately, all consumers in all 50 states should be protected. Waiting for the federal government to do it doesn't satisfy our need in California. So to respond to your question, if somebody rents the vehicle from the agency and their destination is California, I don't think you'd hear a single rental car agency say, well, we're going to rent one vehicle in Nevada and then we'll rent only safe ones in California. That's not the position of the rental car agencies. They are positing that they only rent safe vehicles. So you should be renting a safe vehicle in Nevada, whether it's headed to California or Tennessee, just as we seek California rental agencies, big and small, to play by the same rules. If they are in fact protecting the safety of the renters, this will create a level playing field with maybe smaller companies that are working on smaller margins.
So you're expecting Hertz or Enterprise or whomever, if this law goes into effect, that in Nevada or in Tennessee or in Delaware or Maine, they're going to have the same rule and not rent those vehicles?
I would think they should. If not mandated by those states, then in the spirit and compliance with a vehicle that maybe starts being rented in California or its destination is California. The issue here is safety, and I don't think we should mitigate safety to wait for the next Houck tragedy to happen.
If a vehicle is rented and then is subject to a recall, must the rental company track down the owner and take the vehicle back from them?
One of the amendments that I accepted in dialogue with the committee would be a notice provision. If somebody has rented a vehicle, they've taken their family to Disneyland from the LA airport, and the company receives notice of a safety recall, we would expect the company to use good faith efforts and document their efforts to contact that family based on the cell phone number they left when they rented the car.
If they rent the car in California and take it to Las Vegas, must the rental company go to Las Vegas to retrieve the car?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, under what circumstance do we want to allow the unsafe car? Is there a state where we're going to provide haven for an unsafe vehicle?
Okay. I'm looking at the ramifications of your bill. I mean, that's a fair question. And then I guess, to pick up on something one of the other witnesses said, this is a rental car company because of a very tragic circumstance, a rental car bill. Is there a reason we don't apply the same standard to taxi cab companies and to limousine companies and, for example, to the state of California, which has a very large fleet of cars? If it's a safety issue, what's the limiting principle that says only rental cars?
I'm open to expanding the scope of this, is the simple answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. I'd like to just to ask a quick question of witnesses who, if you don't have an answer, just say, I don't know that for sure. There was a report that I understand, a study that was initiated by NHTSA that examined the pace with which rent-a-car companies responded to safety recalls by actually having the vehicles repaired. And at least one report, a news report in the Los Angeles Times, I believe, indicated that Hertz, pursuant to the study, Hertz fixed about a third of its vehicles within 90 days. Avis and Budget, 53% within that same time frame, and Enterprise, 65%. Simple question, are those figures wrong?
Yes.
Okay, and are they wrong in this? Is the study erroneous, or was the news report erroneous?
The way the study was conducted didn't take into account the fact that vehicles don't remain in our fleets all that long. So the manufacturers reported cars that they sold, but by the time a recall was launched, had already been disposed of from our fleets.
I would, rather than going through an exercise of speculation here, I would appreciate submitting to my office what you would consider to be the actual analysis of the time frames within which repairs are conducted and not. Let me just say for the record, I wouldn't want to be driving a rental car that had been subject to a recall and not know it. And if these numbers are anywhere close to accurate, they are deficient. But I'll look forward to receiving the actual data if you think there's a disparity, and then I'll contact NHTSA and see why they think the study was accurate and your report is not. All right, other questions or comments from members of the committee? Mr. Huffman.
I want to thank you for this bill, Mr. Monning, and I especially want to thank Ms. Houck for her courage in being here and taking up this cause. And I think this bill and this tragedy is really the poster child for just why secret settlements are so pernicious. It's why we sit here, and there's a claim that this is the only time anything like this has ever happened, and we have no way to verify that. So we know that most folks in this tragic situation take the money, sign the confidentiality, and none of us ever know about it. But you've enabled us to shine a very bright light on a clearly problematic practice in this industry, and it's something that I think we can make some much-needed improvements on. So thank you.
All right, colleagues. Mr. Dickinson, quick comment?
Quick comment. I too want to thank Mr. Monning for this bill. I think that when any of us go to rent a car, we have an expectation that we're getting a safe vehicle. And the testimony that the repairs occur within a very rapid time frame, it seems to me, leads to the conclusion that the burden here of this bill is minimal. So it's in the interest of rental car companies, it seems to me, as well as all the rest of us, to make sure that we do get safe cars when we rent them.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Monning, as you close, I do want to say I was encouraged by the comment from Mr. Ross, actually, who indicated that there was a continuing discussion to refine the bill that would be ongoing from this point forward. And Mr. Monning, is that your understanding as well?
I'm open to further dialogue with all stakeholders. My concern, the bottom line, is protection of consumer safety. And if we can find a path that achieves that goal without compromising consumer safety, I welcome further dialogue.
Very well. Can we take that as your close, or would you to elaborate further?
I think you can take that as my close. You've been generous with your time, committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The bill's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. Call the roll, please.
Fear.
Aye.
Fear, aye. Wagner. Wagner, no. Adkins. Adkins, aye. Dickinson. Dickinson, aye. Silva. Silva, no. Huber. Huffman. Huffman, aye. Jones. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, aye. Wachowski. Wachowski, aye.
That bill has 6 votes and is out. Out as amended. Congratulations.